Hello, I'm Sheila Rogers. The title of my address this evening is The Interview Tool, and you could say I stand before you as the very embodiment of the title. I have been at CBC Radio for something like 400 years, and I have done thousands of interviews. Now I talk to Canadian writers on a program called The Next Chapter. It is amazing that I make my living talking to writers. My very first author interview was in 1978, and I began at the top. I was working at CKWS Television in Kingston, Ontario, hosting and producing a daily current affairs show. I was also the wacky weather woman. I was 22 and just a zygote. A publicist called and asked if I wanted to interview Timothy Finley. He had just won a Governor General's Award for the wars, and I said, sure, and I waited for research which never arrived. But Timothy Finley finally did show up. He showed up on the appointed day for the interview with this awfully nice man named Bill, whom I took to be his driver. I began by asking him, what did you do in the wars to receive a Governor General's Award? And he said, well, I didn't do anything. I won it for writing a book called The Wars. And I said, you can win it for writing a book? I thought it was a military honor. Timothy Finley said no. It's a literary award presented for the book judged to be the best of the year in Canada. I gulped and sputtered, and then a miracle happened. Timothy Finley said, would you like to know what happens in the wars? And I said, yes. Oh, yes. Please, tell me about it. And knowing I had a half hour to fill, I added, tell me about yourself. Now, to my title, The Interview Tool. Yes, I was a tool. I didn't do my homework for this live public interview, and it was the goodwill of master storyteller Timothy Finley that saved me. And by the way, most of you know his driver was his lifelong partner and great love, Bill Whitehead, documentary maker. For years, this episode in my life mortified me. But I see it differently now. I had formed an identity for Timothy Finley in my mind, soldier, veteran. But the reality didn't match up. And so I asked him to tell me about himself. Timothy Finley could have walked away off the set in high dudgeon, or low dudgeon. What is dudgeon anyway? He did not. Instead, he entered the conversation with generosity rather than posture. There was no side to him. It was with kindness that he told me about himself and the book, and it was very humbling. If we enter into conversation with generosity, we give others the opportunity to tell us who they are. In effect, this creates the opportunity for others to give of themselves. Tell me about you, your life, your experience, your feelings, your thoughts. Tell me about is a muscular phrase. It is an open-ended interview tool. A few weeks ago, I interviewed Edmund Matatawaban. He's a former chief of Fort Albany First Nation, not far from Attawapiskat on James Bay. He wrote a book about his brutal experience at residential school called Up Ghost River. And Edmund is, in fact, on the shortlist for a Governor General's Award this November. Here is his answer to a question that was open-ended. What was it like there at St. Anne's?
It was, well, when you get slapped within 2 minutes of entry, that's a clear signal that life was going to be tough. And it was tough. For us, I think, to converse, to carry a normal conversation is very difficult. And I listened to my daughter right now. She was sitting in the back seat as we were driving from Timmins. And she's talking with her friend, and they're just talking about absolutely nothing, but they were talking and conversing and back and forth. We can't do that. It's when we talk, it has to be a topic, a subject, a reason, a good reason, and conversation. That's the first thing that we lost. So it's changed many things. You were told to be quiet, silence. So of course you start to live in your head.
Conversation, that's the first thing we lost. Imagine everything having to be a topic, a subject, the difficulty of carrying on a normal conversation. Imagine losing small talk, the oil and the salad dressing of conversation. I had no idea he would tell me that. The question, what was it like, allows for surprise and for story. I've been party to years of cocktail chit-chat and dinner debates. I know, hashtag first world problems. The lesson I've learned right at my own dining room table sometimes is that talking for victory is aggressive. It is, in fact, not conversation. The conversations that stay with me are the ones like I had with Edmund Matatawaban, where there is authenticity, where I talked less than I listened, where I wasn't planning my own clever riposte while the other person was talking. Lily Tomlin once suggested that we listen with an intensity that most people save for talking, and I like that, and I'm trying. The first time I filled in for the legendary CBC radio host Peter Zosky, perhaps you've heard of him, as deputy host of Morningside. The call came on a Sunday night. I was having a dinner party, and the guests included the publisher of the Walrus, although she wasn't at that point, Shelagh Ambrose. The phone rang, and it was Peter's producer. Peter had pulled a muscle in his back, and he was in a lot of pain, and this meant it was my turn at bat. I sent my guests home, except for Shelagh, who made me drink 10 gallons of water right away. The enormity of what I had to do hit me like a rogue wave. How do you fill in for the great interviewer? How does Dorothy fill in for Oz? So I called Peter, and I said, dude, what do I do? And he said, well, just listen. And I said, well, yeah, and then what? And he said, no, just listen. Active listening is a sign of respect. A friend of mine says listening is not a spectator sport, it is a full contact sport. And it's probably no coincidence that listen and silent are built from the exact same letters. I'm going to leave you this evening with a rhyme from childhood, useful, I think, in conversation where the silent partner is equal in dialogue. A wise old owl lived in an oak. The more he saw, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Why can't we be like that wise old bird? In other words, just shut up and get out of the way, which I'm doing right now. Thank you very much.